Welcome to Every Friday with Dan and Olivia. I'm Dan Miles.
And I'm Olivia Dalbo.
And she is back among us. You were missed these past 2 weeks.
I was missing you guys too, but I had some stuff to take care of.
And we understand, and so do the listeners. As everyone probably knows, our past 2 episodes featured Tom and myself commenting on the various submissions we received from listeners, telling us about your first music purchases. The last episode you appeared on was the great Cherish versus Respect debate.
Yes.
We got a lot of positive feedback from the listeners on that one. Some said it was the best one we've done so far because it really made them think and had an impact on their outlook on relationships.
Yeah, it was a deep and pithy and profound subject that sort of surprised me. I was, as I said, I think at the beginning of the show, really on the fence about the theme, and because the question didn't come from me, so to speak. It came from sort of something that was out there in the ethers, but it sort of struck a curiosity in my psyche. And sometimes when you are asked things last minute, such as the way it was when we were sort of trying to drum up questions, sometimes that's the best way because you don't get in your head too much. And so it's just funny how it ended up turning out. But I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I loved... I just love it when people participate to that extent. Sorry, there's like another huge.
This is what you call.
I moved, you guys. That's one of the reasons why I wasn't in the last 2 episodes.
You moved to the airport?
I moved to Burbank Airport.
That's some low fun.
And I'm loving it. I never knew living inside an airport could be so much fun.
She's live at baggage claim right now, everybody.
I am. Lots of baggage.
Lovey was moving, so her computer and stuff was in boxes, so that's why we didn't know. But I do have to say, though, referring to that episode, you're right. I mean, it didn't only resonate with you. It resonated with everybody because once everybody started participating, it was fun to listen to, even for the people who didn't submit an answer. But I have to say that I did get a lot of grief for opening that one with David Cassidy's version of Cherish instead of the original by the association. And I went with that one because you co-starred in a film with him. I was just simply acknowledging that. It wasn't because I liked his version better, but our listeners are becoming very vocal with their opinions. Maybe we should stop encouraging them.
I don't know. I sort of think it's yeah. No, I mean, I that's sort of what I loved about it is I think the show continues to evolve and become more diverse, and I think audience participation is only a good thing. It makes it fun for them, and it makes it fun for us.
Yeah, if we would have taken on that topic as you, me, and Tom, it wouldn't have been as rich as the conversation was with like 60 plus other people chiming in. So that was pretty cool. Speaking of listeners and favorite episodes, Renee McKay, who's one of our newer listeners, decided she wanted to go all the way back to the beginning and listen to every episode so she'd feel caught up with everyone else. Out of all that, do you want to take a guess what her favorite episode was? I'll give you one hint. It was from our very first Oreo milkshake session.
Oh, really? Oh, brilliant. And so was it the very first Oreo? Was it the very first episode that we did, or was it one of the 4 or the 6 that evening?
Yeah, we actually did 8 on our very first session.
God, we must have been mad. I look back in retrospect now, the thought of doing 8.
I know. It's great. Yeah. Well, here's the comment she left on our website. She says, "I'm trying to catch up on all your podcasts. This one was my favorite! ! Love the Ethel Merman to the 70s songs, Olivia. Okay. Made me laugh out loud."
Okay, great. Well, maybe Ethel will be coming out
That was episode 6. We ended up calling that one A Real Dame Presence. It's the one where we just threw the outlines away and it just winged the whole thing. And since it turned out good, it makes me wonder, why do we do outlines? Why don't we just wing every episode? No,
I know. Well, that's sort of what I liked about the Cherish and Respect episode, and all the song, the questions that you guys had, is that, it allows us to sort of wing it, really, in response to the questions, the answers that come back from our listeners. When you played that David Cassidy song in the Cherished and Respected episode, I'm glad you did, because I didn't realize he was such a good singer. He actually had a really, really good voice. I mean, he wasn't just a pretty face.
He had a good voice and he was a talented guy, but what he suffered from was joining him on stage were a bunch of mimes who were totally unconvincing on the Partridge Family. You knew that was not a real band. I think it kind of detracts, like, I'm a cool rock star, and this playing the woodblock, some actress with no sense of rhythm, and pretending to play the drums, some little kid. But yeah, he had hits. That was one of his first hits, I think. Even though Tom isn't with us for the session, as Carlo DeVito said in The Breakfast Club, we are not alone.
No, we are not.
On our Where Would You Live episode, we got to hear Olivia's Irish, Scottish, and Australian accents. Can you do Boston?
No.
I'll start you off. Can you say records?
I have no idea what that means or what you just said.
That's how you say records. That's how you say records in Boston, records. And you say wicked retarded. Okay, well, let me put this one. Here's something that came from my real life.
I would just be embarrassed because it's not something I wish it was just a little bit more darn easy than that.
It's no. I was taking an order from someone on the phone one time who was from Boston, and she said she was reading the name of this company, and she said Autopots. So I spelled it back. I spelled it back to her, POTS. Pots. Yeah. She goes, no, PARTS, Autopots. That's how you say really? Auto parts.
Wow.
Okay. So what all this is building up to, joining us from Boston is our good friend Ken Reid. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. I felt like a real creep just sitting here while you guys talked, and I was just like, hey, let me look. Yeah, Boston accent is essentially like if you take an Australian accent and then make it more drunk.
Yeah,
it's very similar.
Really?
So
yeah.
Boston, you sound like a drunk Australian if you're from Boston.
Yeah, I had a friend who married a girl from, I think, Melbourne, and she was here visiting, and my other friend who grew up in Boston kept asking her what part of Boston she grew up in, and she's like, I'm from Australia. And he's like, no, seriously, where in Boston are you from? And did not believe that it was not Boston, because it was, I mean, they're not that similar, and he's a little bit slow, but yeah, they're somewhat similar accents.
Olivia mentioned on the show that she moved to the U.S. around age 9 and made a conscious effort to retain her English accent, but you appear to have gone the opposite direction and moved away from your Boston accent.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you speak for a living. Is that part of the reason?
Well, no one's going to listen to you and take you seriously if you sound like a heroin dealer. I mean, it's not a pleasant accent. Also, I don't like people immediately knowing where you're from without you telling them. That's always scary. Yeah. But it was a lot of effort to get rid of said Boston accent. Yeah.
Well, I watched a really interesting PBS documentary one time about all the accents around the country, and they showed these Southern kids from the South doing Shakespeare in a school play, and they have the Southern accent, but they were saying Shakespeare's words. And on the surface, it was kind of funny to hear this, Georgia or Mississippi accent doing Shakespeare. But then later in the show, they showed people going to speech places to lose the Southern accent for the reason you just said. It made it harder for them to get a job, or to, it was a deterrent for them. Then I felt kind of sorry for them. It's kind of like when you go into broadcasting, and if you're reading the news, they want you to have the Ohio accent,
Interesting side note, I bought a bunch of vintage books a couple weeks ago because obviously I need more things in my house, and I got a NBC, it was NBC Radio from 1955. It was their pronunciation guide, so it was a book that they gave to all their broadcasters, and it has every word and how you're supposed to pronounce it on the radio. And my favorite is their official pronunciation for robot is robot.
I've heard
like
robot.
Yeah, like robot. Robot.
The guy who does the Onion News, Ted Baxter kind of reporter who does that, he always says robot.
Yeah, that's what it says. That's according to NBC circa mid-50s. That's how you're supposed to pronounce it on the radio.
That's pretty crazy. Well,
audience viewers can't see because they're not viewers, they're listeners. This is a podcast after all. But as we're Skyping, I'm looking at Ken, who's a very handsome guy and has always reminded me of Superman. I mean, literally, like in the flesh, which is a compliment. But then coincidentally and ironically enough, I'm looking at you now, Ken, and you're reminding me of Howard Cosell.
Oh, dear God. It's the headphones and the microphone.
It's the microphone and the headphones. And I remember the last show that you were on of ours that I wasn't present on. You guys were talking about Battle of the Network Stars. And incidentally, Howard Cosell was interviewing me, right? So it's just sort of funny that here we are, and that's who you're reminding me of. Not necessarily facially, just
thank God.
Kind of the way you're...
Well, not only was he interviewing you, he was also kind of manhandling you. I mean, if you watch that...
Remember, he gave me a rupee, and I
well, it's a close race.
Here's what happened. He had his arm around you, and pretty kind of tight, like he kind of didn't like it. And then he started asking you about the race, and it was funny because you started to reenact it, which gave you an excuse to push off from him, and he had to let go of you. And I was running, and then he's just staring at you. And then he says, "You're very expressive and very, very attractive." And then you go, "Thank you," and he goes, "Thank you." So creepy. Oh,
yeah. Howard Cosell was extra creepy. He was one of those radio guys that you were like, "Why is he on television?" Like we're looking at him. It's very.
I never
strange.
thought about it before, but he's kind of like a drunk Australian, if you think about it.
It's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, when Olivia was on your TV Guidance Counselor podcast back in July, even though you spoke for almost 2 hours, you mentioned at the end that
hotel room, it was just a dream to be had. It was so much fun.
Oh, that was great.
Even though you guys went for 2 hours at the end, you said there were still some topics that you hadn't made it to. So today's show is going to be an opportunity for you guys to basically pick up where you left off and continue that conversation. But before we do that, I have to say that I've really enjoyed, Ken, your latest batch of episodes.
Thank you.
You've had
some
really,
shows are great.
Really cool and interesting guests. Ben Schwartz, who was so funny on Parks and Recreation. You had an interesting conversation with a young comedian named Tawanda Gonan, who's originally from Zimbabwe, ventured into some uncharted territory relating more to music than television.
Yeah.
Your interview with Tracy Newman is one of my favorite ones you've ever done.
Thank you.
She's a sister of Lorraine Newman, who's also been on your show from Saturday Night Live. You guys, I like it when you I try and do this on my own show, when you really dig into the craft, of something. You guys did that with stand-up, writing comedy, even magic, So that was a good one. But I would say the most intriguing interview you've done lately was Penelope Spheris.
Yeah, she's great.
She's a great guest.
Yeah, director of the first Wayne's World movie, among other things. What was funny about that one is, you told her that the punk rock documentary, The Decline of Western Civilization, that really resonated you, and then resonated with you, and then the sequel, Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years, you appreciated it more, but more as an outsider. Well, it was the exact reverse for me.
Oh, I'm so sorry that was your experience.
It was. The Metal Years resonated with me. I was in that scene, and then the punk rock one, I was more of an outsider.
Were you floating in pools with a bottle of Jack Daniels with your mother sitting next to you in part 2? Who's that, the guy from Wasp? Who's that guy who's doing that?
Chris Holmes from Wasp.
From Wasp,
yeah. He was fully clothed in the swimming pool, drinking vodka with his mother watching. It was what I mean by that was my time is the way those guys looked and the way the venues were and the gear and all that. I mean, in those years, mid 80s, I was playing club. I knew guys like them.
But were you full on glam, teased hair and spandex?
No.
Okay.
A couple guys in my band used hairspray.
Okay.
But none of us wore makeup, eyeliner or anything, unless we were shooting a video. And at one time I was in a video and they wanted me to wear makeup. It was literally the only time I've worn makeup, and I had no clue how to apply it.
You would have looked hot. You would have looked hot with makeup, I'll tell you right now, because you're already innately pretty. So if you put a bit of lipstick on and just rocked that eyeliner a little bit with a fringe, been very cool.
Yeah, you got good cheekbones for that sort of thing. I think you could have really accentuated. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, in those days, the most important thing to me was what was coming out of my instrument. But I was bad in that area. I mean, I didn't dress well. I mean, like I said, one of the roles of band member girlfriends was to help guys like me get their hair and clothes right, because I was not even trying. So everybody would be up there with their spandex pants and whatever shirt they came up with, and I would just I needed help, But as a player, I didn't. So that was more important to me. But for people who don't know, Penelope Spheris did a documentary about punk rock. Then she did one about heavy metal. Mm-hmm. Then she did a third part more recently I guess it was about homeless kids and their music.
Yeah, it was from '97. It was about they called them gutter punks. It was homeless punk rock kids in the late '90s in LA.
Wow.
So I recommend people go listen to that interview. And I mean, the decline of Western civilization, part 2. It's like a real life Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
And I would say, I was noticing, because I rewatched it after you interviewed her, just for like a reminder. And most of the musical sequences, never mind, the interview stuff. I'm not making those sounds, everybody. Somebody else is. And all I can say is it's not me and it's not Ken. That's all I'm gonna say.
Hey.
So I don't think Olivia's at the airport. I think she's broadcasting from Yemen, if I'm not mistaken.
Can you still hear me?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
That was no problem. But I was going to say is most of the musical sequences where they show Faster Pussycat it's almost indistinguishable from Spinal Tap.
Oh yeah.
It actually looks like the way it's shot and the way the music is and everything. It looks like just Spinal Tap up there. So that means that their parody was pretty darn accurate.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, that movie is completely ridiculous. In those I mean, it's a fascinating time capsule of that time, but it is hard to believe that it is in fact a documentary and not just some bizarre fictionalized account of what people did for a number of years.
And what I didn't realize till I heard your interview is I didn't know she was involved with Albert Brooks's Real Life.
Yeah, she produced it.
Yeah, I knew the film. It was Albert Brooks's first before he did all of Lost in America, Defending Your Life, all that great stuff. I didn't know she was involved with it, so that was interesting. She was interesting to hear from in general. They did some Decline of Western Civilization panel that I saw on YouTube that she participated in, but you had as you do with all your interviews, you had a good rapport with her. She was comfortable talking to you, and it was really interesting. I mean, I recommend the other ones I mentioned, but put that one at the top of the list.
She's one of those people that I think doesn't get enough credit for being like a huge innovator, especially as a woman director. I mean, she founded the first music video production company in the world in 1973, and she shot Parliament Funkadelic in the mid 70s, and she taught Albert Brooks how to make movies. She filmed and directed and produced all of his shorts on SNL. So that stuff never comes up very often. So it's always fun to sort of spotlight that kind of stuff when I am lucky enough to have guests like that on. And
as we all know, Olivia was in Wayne's World 2.
Yes.
Penelope didn't direct that one. She directed the first one.
Yes.
But so earlier today, I re-listened to Olivia's appearance on your show. So just to remind you guys, the topics you already covered, let me just run them down. Bolero, Conan the Destroyer, Flying, which is also known as Dream to Believe, Bullies, Growing Pains, Simon and Simon, The Wonder Years, Really Weird Tales, Greedy, The Last Good Time, The Single Guy, Justice League, Doom, and A Spirit of 76. And the two uncovered topics that you specifically name-checked at the end, it was Battle of the Network Stars and a movie called Crash Course.
Oh yeah, Crash Course.
Why don't we pick it up there?
So I mean, I have to say I was not necessarily gotten angry messages for not covering Crash Course, but
really?
Listeners were like, "How did you not talk about Crash Course?" Because that is a beloved movie among many people.
Okay, but this is a TV movie though.
It's
not
a
a theatrical
TV movie. Yeah, okay. It was in and Olivia can probably knows this better than I do, but my understanding is in the sort of mid to late 80s, the networks had a lot of the teen actors under contracts essentially and would make them be in these sort of made for TV movies over the summer that would be these sort of all-star casts with all the big kid actors from all the sort of teen TV shows. And there was one called Dance Till Dawn, there was one called Mystery Date, and Crash Course was a huge one. It also had a lot of people like Kelsey Grammer from Cheers is in it. I'm thinking of Dance Till Dawn.
Harvey Korman.
Larry, you talk about from Harvey
Korman. Yep.
Yeah, yes. From the Carol Burnett show, who's just the most delightful man I've ever worked with. He's just, gosh, I mean, I used to love watching him as, crack up, with Harvey Korman, but to actually work with him, he really does do that. Like, people crack him up, and he himself it's so hard just not to lose it when you watch him because he's so committed to whatever he's playing with such a vengeance. He plays it so seriously, whether he has a lisp or a speech impediment or a limp or whatever he does, he just takes it to a whole other level. I mean, I think he, like some of my favorite performers and entertainers on the whole, just comes from a whole other era that I don't know if we're ever going to see that again because they're just trained differently. The physical comedy gifts that he had and the voice, the walk, he just had it all and just was a lovely, lovely man.
The way you described it.
Jackie Harry.
Jack Hay. I love Jack Hay.
Oh, Kimberly.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking to me like,
Oh, Mary. Yeah, when she. Yeah.
Mary. You're so, oh.
She's so funny.
Apparently, this is also known as Driving Academy. So
Not as
maybe,
good a name.
but maybe it went out on the air as Crash Course and went out on the direct-to-video as Driving Academy. So, and if somebody's listening, they go, "I don't remember seeing her in Crash Course, but I remember seeing her in Driving Academy." Same movie.
Well, what happened a lot of the times with those made-for-TV movies was they would release them theatrically in Europe and in England. So a lot of them ended up in theaters, weirdly. Like probably the most famous one is Tobe Hooper's Salem's Lot, which was a two-part made-for-TV movie they edited into like a 90-minute movie, and it played theaters in Japan and England and all over Europe. And so Crash Course may have been Driving Academy in the European states.
It's interesting because I think I'm probably the only teenager that wasn't cast. I actually had to audition for that role. Teeny Others and Alyssa Milano and Brian Bloom. I think Brad Wong and I were the only two who didn't have a network deal or whatever. So it was interesting because it was a Argentinian role, and I actually had to speak Spanish in it, and I remember going in. It was one of those days where I had 3 auditions that day, and so I've always driven an SUV because of that very reason, because I need enough space to have various different outfits, and I just remember going in there and just kind of morphing into this sort of Argentinian kind of very, very wealthy, spoiled princess who was always manicuring her nails. And I remember when they actually gave me that, the AD actually gave me something to say in Spanish when my character Maria is she's a very bad driver. We all are. That's why we're in Crash Course. Because we're trying to get our licenses. Nice. And, we did all of these scenes in Long Beach. We literally rented a freeway because, the movie was about us driving very badly. And if they had any other cars surrounding us, we might have put people in hospital. So they had to rent this entire freeway where they could do all these sort of funny shots of us, driving in zigzag lines and stuff. But this particular scene, my character bumps into crashes into a fruit truck. That this fruit man is like, ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué es el problema? And I just kind of go off on him, And I'm like, mi papá es el dueño de la compañía que te vende gota cochina y te correr al salverlo al ocho al flag, And I had to just come up with memorize. I'm okay with memorizing lines per se, but Spanish lines, that's a lot to ask an actress to do. Put a half an hour lunch in about 5 minutes. So we'll just send Danielle to your dressing room, and he speaks Spanish, so he'll just write something that'll be kind of appropriate that you would probably say to a man who whose father employs him to have this fruit truck, because that's basically what I said in Spanish was, don't speak to me about the fact that I've run into your fruit, because my father owns the fruit truck that I just ran over, which is yours, and if you don't get out of my way, I'll spray you with red flag roach killer or something like that. It was very interesting, but that in particular stands out to me, as did really bonding with Brad Wong, because we were literally on set every day with all these celebrity kids, and we were kind of the newcomers, or we were the ones that didn't get off the part, so we had to kind of audition for it, old school style, and we were around kind of Jackie Harry, who had this huge show, and Harvey Korman. So it was really it was really fun experience. Teeny Others, obviously, as well. And
it looks like you also got Edie McClurg, Ray Walston, and Dick Butkus.
Yes, yeah. Dick Butkus. That's right. I didn't see, like when Wilt Chamberlain, who I worked with on Conan, I didn't really know a lot about athletes that were then, becoming actors. But that was definitely the era when I think it kind of all started, because they could get endorsed, and, they just had instant marketability and a demographic reach. But yeah, Dick Butkus, he was very nice as well.
Dick Butkus was on My Two Dads at that point too, so it was all sitcoms people's. And also the guy who played Mac on Night Court, whose name I can't remember, yes. Charles I can't remember his last name, but he's very funny in it as well.
I think a lot of athletes, they reach the end of their career physically, in terms of being an athlete, but they still want the spotlight and attention. And, it's common. Merlin Olsen, was L.A. Rams. He ended up on Little House on the Prairie, one of Charles Ingles' friends. And he turned out he was a pretty decent actor. Hate to bring up this name, O.J. Simpson. He started going into films, comedy so-called, and it's just pretty common. Some try and don't cut it. I think Carl Lewis comes to mind. It doesn't always translate, but some people, or who's the guy? There was a guy, I'm sure you know this, Ken, who was in the Revenge of the Nerds, the first one.
He's UN Jefferson in Revenge of the Nerds. That's
he's an adult. He was in Martian Chronicles.
Yeah, he's also in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Black, the blaxploitation Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde movie. It's oh my God, I can't remember his name.
It's Bernie somebody.
Oh yeah, it's Bernie. Oh man, Bernie Casey. Bernie Casey.
We got at the same time.
Yeah.
He's a great actor.
Oh yeah. But you had guys like Lyle Alzado was making movies, and then Brian Bosworth was in Stone Cold in 1990. But then even guys like Fred Williamson was a football player, and a lot of those guys as well. A lot of the 70s sort of men of action.
Yeah. Action man.
Some can pull it off. Some probably should have just been acting and not done sport.
Well, Kurt Russell was played professional baseball. He was in Maine. He got what's the word? Recruited into a professional baseball team, and he hurt himself, so he started acting again. He was a kid actor, and the only reason he went back to acting was because his baseball career kind of got cut short.
Well, Jim Brown, Dirty Dozen.
Yeah.
So there's a precedent for it. But see, Olivia's had Schwarzenegger, Will Chamberlain, Dick Butkus. If we want to do a study, we could probably find others too.
I think there's a few others. I'd have to put my thinking cap on for that.
Shaq. I mean, Shaq's a big one. He was in a ton of movies.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of his movies. I've mainly just seen his commercials.
You're telling me you haven't seen Shazam and Steel?
Shazam!
I've barely seen him. Play basketball.
Wow.
And he was on the Suns, and where I live, I just wasn't interested.
That's hilarious. No, but I mean, it's interesting that we didn't talk about that on the show. And what's even more interesting to me is that I'm only now just hearing that people really remember that. Because for me, that was my first TV movie, and I kind of want to say that I might have done it pre the Wonder Years or right before.
It's 88, so it would have. You probably shot it before. When did Wonder Years premiere? I think it was a mid-season.
It was released in January of 88, so you had to have done it in 87.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think Wonder Years was a mid-season replacement in 88, if I want to remember.
Yeah, I feel like it was just because I remember I did the pilot of the Wonder Years, and then I went and did a show in Hawaii all about Vietnam with it was like a set in the 60s as well. And,
was it China Beach?
It was something like China Beach.
Tour of Duty?
Tour of Duty. Yeah, that's it. And that was really fun. And I got to play this really cool chick from the 60s. She wasn't a hippie like Karen. She was kind of more of a mod, but she was sort of she was pro-Vietnam, whereas Karen was anti-Vietnam, but she was kind of like a rich girl, a rich American girl, whereas Karen was kind of more, well, anyway, we know what Karen was, but so I think that that Crash Course was just right before the Wonder Years, because I just seem to remember it being like right before.
Now, was it good? Was it really funny? Was it average? I mean, I haven't seen it. So.
A Crash Course.
Yeah.
It's very sitcom-y. It's on par with all the sitcoms of the time, I think.
It's just not unlike Growing Pains, which I think that Ken and I did cover, right, on your show?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which I did 2 of, and then Carol and Neil, and it's interesting that they were the creators of the Wonder Years also, and that show, Growing Pains, was what kind of was the genesis of my working relationship with them. But if you just compare like Growing Pains, shows, sitcoms that came out of that era, and TV movies that came out of that era, and the Wonder Years, which wasn't a TV, it wasn't a sitcom, but it had more of a style of kind of All in the Family or those classic family shows that came out of that era as well, or even pre that era. You look back now in retrospect, and they hold up, and it's either because they fit into the category of satire, or they're a little bit corny, and it's cool to reflect because, I think corny is cool. I'm one of these people that to me, what is cool is if something's just a little bit corny. I love it. That really speaks. That's high entertainment to me.
Like singing 70 songs as Ethel Merman.
or anything David Cassidy has done.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then, sometimes you get really lucky and it's like a potpourri.
Home or mobile?
I'm so sorry, guys. My phone has just been updated and it's gonna go in the trash.
It sounded like he was speaking Spanish there. Was it yelling at you about a fruit truck?
Yeah, I just put it on Spanish translation for me. I think it was listening to my my Maria impersonation. But it was fun, and I think. What do you think? Do you think it still holds up, Ken, if you were to go back? And I haven't watched it in ages. I just know that it's funny. I mean, I think Brad Wong was funny. I think.
Yeah, I think it does.
Harvey Korman had to be good.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. It's sort of, like Battle of the Network Stars. It was interesting to see sort of the biggest actors from all the different networks on one thing. It's like when, DC and Marvel Comics cross over or something. So there's a sort of a novelty value to that. And I think because it's very teenage centric and it's about teenagers getting their licenses, which they still do now, and technology has not changed in any way, it does have a little bit more of a timeless quality than some of the other stuff. It's broad, and there's the sort of A story of the kids and the B story of the adults being the more it's not quite cartoonish, but it's sort of the precursor for a lot of sort of the 90s Nickelodeon shows, or like the 90s Disney Channel shows with the sort of pre-tweens kind of thing. But it's I know a lot of people that they revisit that movie often. It's like a very fondly remembered movie.
How would they get it? I mean, was it ever released on DVD? I mean, I've literally never heard of this.
It did come out on DVD. It was on VHS briefly. I mean, it's on YouTube like everything is now. But I think the other thing is those TV movies were a huge event. So because they only usually aired once or maybe twice, a lot of people taped them and would watch them over and over again. And it was, like a big event, big memorable event for them.
Yeah. See, you'd mentioned Alyssa Milano was in it. Of course, she was a big star on Who's the Boss. Tina Yothers, I don't think I've ever seen her on anything besides Family Ties. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything else apart from racing Olivia on Battle of the Network Stars on the obstacle course. I mean, that's the only. But she wasn't playing her role. She was just herself. And by the way, you won. You smoked her.
But she does a lot of music now. Tina Yothers. I thought
she was on my team. Sorry.
She actually crossed the finish line before you, but she was disqualified because she didn't do all the tires. She skipped like 4 of them. So,
okay. She was on the NBC team, and you were ABC with Joe Willett, and who else was on the team with you? I'm trying to even remember.
Lorenzo Lamas.
Yeah. Lorenzo, the renegade himself.
So John Davidson, is that the guy's name?
He was the team captain. Yeah, John Davidson.
Team captain. Yeah, he was there. Unfortunately, only half of that is on YouTube, part 1. So it doesn't have the conclusion. It just ends. And towards the end of it shows you, Olivia, in about 3 or 4 events. And the co-cell incident we keep talking about is towards the end of the first half. Someone put up part 1 and just never put up part 2. I don't know what the deal is with that. But
when I had Joe on my show, she told me, and this shocked me, was that if you won, you got paid more. So a lot of.
Oh my God! Did you?
So a lot of the.
What do you think I did it?
Yeah, I know. That's
to win. I did it to win, like Flynn.
No, every commercial break they showed you how much the winning and second and third place team got, because they wanted you to know the stakes as you watched so if somebody's doing the tug of war or whatever, you wanted to know exactly who was getting what. So they were throwing the cash numbers up all constantly, not just hers, but all of them.
But I think viewers assumed it was like a charity thing, but it was like, no, if you won today, you're going to make some money. You're paying your mortgage,
In those days, it wasn't. Everybody played for their own greedy selves.
Fair enough. That's good money.
And nobody was shy about letting people like, no, this is why I'm here, I bought my house because of that show.
If you look at $20,000 pyramid, they'd have a celebrity, and then they'd have off the street civilian paired up, and they'd play, and the civilian would, whatever money was won, the celebrity was paid a flat fee, presumably.
Well, they got a SAG day rate to be on game shows, which is why a lot of times if you look at old dating games and stuff, you'll see like Andy Kaufman or Tom Selleck had done it, and it's because they would get a day rate for being on a game show when they were
Michael Richards. Yeah, I think Jim Carrey.
On Battle of the Network Stars, did they?
No, like the dating game.
The dating game.
Yeah, Yeah, a lot of actors would go on there and be Bachelor number 2 and Bachelor number 3. Andy Kaufman did it in character, I think, as
that's
Elijah.
Number 3 wants to say something. Is it all right? He's raising his hand.
You did not ask me. You asked number 2 and then
No,
you went
no,
to number 1. But she did not ask me again.
But it's her prerogative to ask whoever she wants.
But I
You're
was
next. You are next. You're right.
All right.
Here you go. Let's hear your best ending for this sentence. I'll do anything for you except...
Except what?
That's what she wants to know.
You will do anything for me?
No.
Except what?
You will do anything for me except what?
I don't know. Do you know? Maybe to stand on my head.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, you don't have to stand on your head for me. Okay.
But I will do anything for you if you want me to go on the date.
Oh, thank you.